25 years of marriage, a house full of friends and family celebrating our silver anniversary, champagne flowing, laughter echoing through our backyard in suburban Ohio. And then my husband stood up to give a toast. "I've been lying to you all," he said. I smiled. I actually smiled, because I thought he was about to make some sweet joke about forgetting our first date or mixing up our anniversary year. You know, the kind of harmless confession that gets laughs at parties. But when I looked at his face, he wasn't smiling. His hands were shaking. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool October evening. And what he said next would unravel everything I thought I knew about the man I'd spent a quarter century with. My name isn't David Morrison, it's Daniel Kovac. And Sarah, we're not legally married. By the end of that night, someone would be in handcuffs, someone would be in the hospital, and I would discover that the man I married never actually existed. This is a true story, and it's mine. My name is Sarah, and for the next hour, I'm going to tell you about the greatest deception of my life. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 10,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to DR Avenge Stories, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Before we go any further, there are 3 questions you need to keep in mind as I tell you this story. First, who was the man I really married? Because if his name was a lie, what else was? Second, what was he hiding for 25 years? And how did he hide it so perfectly that I, a woman who shared his bed every night, never suspected a thing? And third, why did he choose that moment, our anniversary party, surrounded by everyone we loved, to confess? After 25 years of successfully living this lie, why expose himself then? The answers to these questions will shock you. They shocked me. They shocked the FBI. They shocked our children who had to grapple with the fact that their father was a complete stranger. Because sometimes the person sleeping next to you, the person you've built an entire life with, is the greatest stranger of all. So let me take you back to the beginning, back to 1999, when I met a man named David Morrison and fell in love with what I thought was a simple, honest, predictable life. I met David on a Tuesday in March of 1999. I was 28 years old, working as a pediatric nurse at Riverside Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. We were hosting a charity fundraiser for the Children's Cancer Ward, and he walked in wearing a navy suit that was slightly too big for him, carrying a donation check from his company. He introduced himself as David Morrison, a financial consultant who just relocated to Columbus from Pittsburgh. He was quiet, a little awkward, endearingly nervous when he asked for my phone number. I said yes because there was something genuine about him, something solid. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. Looking back now, I realize how little I actually knew about him. He said his parents had passed away when he was in his 20s, a car accident. He was an only child, he said. No siblings, no extended family to speak of. "You're my family now," he told me. At the time, I thought it was romantic. Now, I understand it was strategic. We married in January of 2000, right at the turn of the millennium. Small wedding, just friends from Columbus. David said he didn't want anything big, that he preferred intimate celebrations. I thought he was humble. I didn't realize he was hiding. Our life together was normal, beautifully, predictably normal. We bought a 3-bedroom ranch house in a suburb called Worthington. White picket fence, literally. David worked as a financial consultant for various firms, mostly contract work. He traveled sometimes, usually just 2 or 3 days at a time, to Cleveland or Cincinnati or Indianapolis. Nothing that raised red flags. In 2001, we had our daughter Emma. In 2004, our son Jake. David was a devoted father. He coached Jake's Little League team, he helped Emma with her science fair projects. He built a treehouse in our backyard that took him 3 summers to finish because he was meticulous about every detail. Our friends joked that David was the most boring man alive. He had the same routine every day. Coffee at 6 a.m., same mug, read the newspaper, actual paper, not online, home by 6 p.m. for dinner. Tuesdays were pasta night. Thursdays were poker with his buddies from work. Saturdays, he mowed the lawn in the same diagonal pattern. I loved his predictability. After growing up with an alcoholic father whose moods were a landmine, David's steadiness felt like safety, like home. But there were small things, tiny cracks that I explained away because I loved him and because questioning them felt paranoid. He handled all our finances, all of them. He said it was because he was better with numbers, and I believed him. I had access to our bank account, but he managed the investments, the retirement funds, the tax returns. He never wanted to travel far. We took vacations, but always within driving distance. Orlando, Nashville, the Outer Banks. When I suggested flying to Europe for our 10th anniversary, he had a panic attack. Full-blown. Hyperventilating, sweating. He said he had a fear of flying from a bad experience as a kid. I never pushed it again. He had a filing cabinet in the basement that he kept locked. He said it was work documents, confidential client information. I never questioned it. Why would I? And then, in 2023, our daughter Emma got interested in genealogy. She wanted to do one of those ancestry DNA tests, you know, the ones everyone's doing now. She was excited to learn about our family history, maybe connect with distant relatives. David lost it. Not angry. David never got angry, but he was adamant. He said those DNA companies sell your information, that it was a privacy risk, that it was a waste of money. Emma was so disappointed. I convinced her to let it go to keep the peace. I didn't know then that David was terrified of what that DNA test might reveal, not about ancestry, about identity. For 25 years, I lived with a man I thought I knew completely, a man who seemed transparent, predictable, safe. I thought the biggest secret he might be keeping was maybe a surprise party or a hidden anniversary gift. I never imagined that his entire existence was a fabrication, that every single thing he'd ever told me about himself was a carefully constructed lie. October 14th, 2024. Our 25th wedding anniversary, a quarter of a century together. I spent weeks planning the party. I wanted it to be perfect. We invited 50 people, friends from the neighborhood, parents from our kids' schools, David's poker buddies, my coworkers from the hospital. Emma flew in from grad school in Ann Arbor. Jake drove up from Cincinnati, where he was working his first job out of college. The weather was perfect. Unseasonably warm for mid-October, about 68 degrees. We set up in the backyard with string lights and a rented tent. I wore a navy blue dress that David had complimented me on months earlier. He wore a gray suit. But David was off that whole day. I noticed it immediately. He barely ate breakfast. He kept checking his phone, which was unusual for him. David hated being on his phone. He took 3 calls that morning and stepped into the garage for each one. When I asked who was calling, he said it was work stuff, contract negotiations. The party started at 5 p.m. Guests arrived with gifts and cards and stories about us as a couple. David's friend Mike gave a toast about how David was the most stand-up guy he'd ever known. Honest to a fault, he said. Everyone laughed. I noticed David was drinking more than usual. David was a 1-beer guy, maybe 2 at a party, but by 7 p.m. he'd had 4 whiskeys. His hands were shaking when he held his glass.
Emma pulled me aside around 6:30 and asked if Dad was okay. "He seems weird, Mom," she said. I told her he was probably just emotional about the milestone. 25 years is a big deal. At 7:47 p.m., I remember the exact time because I looked at my watch when it happened, David clinked his glass with a fork. The sound cut through the conversation. Everyone turned to look at him. My husband stood there under the string lights in our backyard, surrounded by everyone we loved, and he started to speak. "I need to tell you all something," he said.
His voice was shaking. "I've been lying to everyone in this yard for 25 years. There was uncomfortable laughter. A few people smiled, waiting for the punchline. David's brother Tom shouted, "Here we go! What'd you do, Dave? Forget an anniversary?" I smiled too. I actually smiled at him, trying to encourage him, thinking he was nervous about some sweet surprise he'd planned. And then he said it. "My name isn't David Morrison, it's Daniel Kovac. And Sarah, we're not legally married." The laughter died. Someone dropped a glass. I heard it shatter on the patio, but the sound seemed far away, like I was underwater. "I'm wanted for a crime I didn't commit," he continued. "I've been living under a false identity since 1998. I was in witness protection, but I left the program because I thought they'd been compromised. I created David Morrison to survive, and tonight they found me." He pointed toward the driveway. 2 black SUVs were pulling up. 4 men in dark suits got out. One of them held up a badge. "I'm sorry," David said. He was crying now. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I love you. I've always loved you. That was real. That was the only real thing." The federal agents walked into our backyard like they owned it. One of them said, "Daniel Kovac, you need to come with us." The next few minutes are a blur in my memory. Emma was screaming. Jake tried to physically block the agents from taking his father. Our guests were panicking, some filming on their phones, some trying to leave. I just stood there, frozen, watching my husband, or whoever he was, get handcuffed in our backyard while our silver anniversary cake sat untouched on the table. The last thing he said before they put him in the SUV was directed at me. "Check the basement. Filing cabinet. Code is Emma's birthday. You deserve to know everything." And then he was gone. The SUVs pulled away, and I collapsed. Literally collapsed. My friend Janet caught me before I hit the ground. I don't remember the ambulance arriving or the ride to the hospital. I came to in the emergency room, my own ER where I'd worked for 20 years, being treated for shock and hyperventilation. Emma and Jake were there. My daughter looked at me with tears streaming down her face and asked the question I couldn't answer. "Mom, who is Dad?" I didn't know. After 25 years of marriage, I had no idea who my husband was. Before I continue with what happened next, I need to pause for a moment. If you're still with me, if this story is resonating with you, do me a favor. Drop a comment telling me what state you're watching from. I want to know how far this story is reaching. How many people out there understand what it feels like to have your entire reality shattered in an instant? I'll wait. Drop that comment. Tell me where you are. Okay, thank you. Now let me tell you about the filing cabinet, because what I found in our basement, that's when I realized the confession at the party was just the beginning. The rabbit hole went so much deeper than I could have imagined. I went home from the hospital at 2 a.m. The party was long over. Our yard was trashed. Abandoned plates, overturned chairs, someone's jacket left on the grass. The anniversary cake was still there, melting in the October night. Emma and Jake came with me. We walked through the house like it was a crime scene, because in a way it was. Every object, every photo, every piece of furniture was now evidence of a lie. We went to the basement. The filing cabinet was industrial gray, 4 drawers, combination lock on the top drawer. I entered Emma's birthday, May 15th, 051503. It clicked open. Inside the first drawer, 6 passports, all with David's face, different names: David Morrison, Daniel Kovac, Michael Patterson, James Richardson, Robert Chen, Thomas Blackwell. In the second drawer, cash, stacks and stacks of $100 bills, bundled with rubber bands. I counted later, $243,000. Third drawer, documents, birth certificates, social security cards, driver's licenses, all with different names but his photo, rental agreements for properties in different states, bank statements for accounts I'd never heard of, and in the bottom drawer, a gun, a Glock 19, loaded, and underneath it, a burner phone. I turned on the burner phone. It had one contact saved, Handler. The last text message, sent 3 days before our anniversary party, said, "They know where you are. You have 72 hours. Decide." Jake found me sitting on the basement floor, surrounded by these documents, just staring. "Mom," he said, "who did we live with?" The next morning, 2 FBI agents showed up at my door. Agent Sarah Chen, yes, same first name as me, and Agent Marcus Webb. They asked if they could come in. I said yes. What else was I going to say? Agent Chen sat across from me at my kitchen table and told me a story that made no sense. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, "or I suppose we can't call you that since the marriage wasn't legal, your husband is Daniel Kovac. In 1998, he was a witness to a mob execution in Atlantic City. He testified against the Genovese crime family. He was placed in witness protection under the identity David Morrison. But in 2000, he disappeared from the program. We've been looking for him on and off for 24 years. The case was mostly cold until 3 weeks ago, when facial recognition software flagged him in a background of a news segment about a Little League championship, your son's team. I asked the question that was burning in my throat. Was he just a witness, or was he involved? Agent Webb and Agent Chen exchanged a look. "That's complicated," Webb said. Over the next 3 hours, they told me what they knew, and what they didn't know. And honestly, what they didn't know was almost more than what they did. According to their records, Daniel Kovac was a civilian who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He witnessed a hit outside a restaurant in Atlantic City. He called it in anonymously, but the mob figured out who he was. He agreed to testify in exchange for protection. But there were inconsistencies in his story even back then, details that didn't quite add up, a background check that had some gaps, questions about what he was really doing in Atlantic City that night. The prosecutor at the time wanted the testimony badly enough that they didn't push too hard on the inconsistencies. Daniel testified, 3 mob members went to prison. Daniel entered witness protection as David Morrison. 6 months into the program, he stopped checking in with his handler, disappeared completely. The U.S. Marshals Service looked for him but eventually classified him as a fugitive from protection, rare but not unheard of. The assumption was he'd been found and killed. "But he wasn't killed," I said. "He was with me, building a life, coaching Little League." "Yes," Agent Chen said, "and that's what we don't understand. If he successfully disappeared, why surface now? Why confess?" I told them about the burner phone, about the text message. They took it as evidence. Over the next week, the media circus was insane. Our house was surrounded by news vans. My face was on CNN. Wife of witness protection fugitive speaks out. Except I wasn't speaking out. I'd gone completely silent. I couldn't go to work. How could I face my colleagues when I was national news? Emma had to take a leave from grad school. Jake quit his job and moved back home because he was having panic attacks. We were all in therapy within a week, individual and family.
Our therapist asked me if I'd noticed any red flags over the years. I told her about the little things, the locked cabinet, the financial control, the fear of flying, the reaction to the DNA test. Those could be signs of abuse, she said. Financial control, isolation from family. But he wasn't abusive, I said. He was kind. He was gentle. I couldn't finish the sentence because I realized I had no idea what he really was. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Rebecca Torres, who specialized in identity fraud cases. I gave her everything from the filing cabinet. I needed to know who I'd really been married to.
Rebecca worked fast. Within 2 weeks, she came back to me with information that made everything even more confusing. David Morrison, the identity, was almost too perfect, too clean. The Social Security number was real, issued to a David Morrison who died in infancy in 1972, the kind of identity theft that requires sophistication, professional-level work. But the other identities in the filing cabinet, they were all created the same way. Ghost identities built on the bones of dead children, not the kind of thing a random witness would know how to do. Sarah, Rebecca told me, whoever your husband is, he's not an amateur. This level of identity creation requires expertise, training, experience. You're saying he might have been law enforcement? I asked. Or something else, she said. The money in the filing cabinet, I had the bills analyzed. Non-sequential numbers, old bills, some from the 1990s, not the kind of cash you get from a bank withdrawal, the kind of cash you accumulate slowly, carefully, from sources that don't want to be traced. Where did that money come from? Was Daniel, whatever his name was he running some kind of operation while married to me? I started going through our financial records, really looking for the first time. David had always handled the money, said it was his way of contributing since I did everything with the kids. I'd trusted him. What I found, we lived modestly. Our expenses matched our reported income, but there were small cash deposits, $300 or $400 at a time every few months. When I asked the bank about them, they said David made them in person, always cash, always under the $10,000 reporting threshold. Over 25 years, those small deposits added up to over $200,000. I looked at David's work history. Financial consultant, he'd always said, contract work. I called the firms he'd claimed to work for. Some had no record of him. Others said he'd worked there briefly, but they had minimal documentation. How had he filed taxes? I pulled our tax returns. They looked normal. Reported income, standard deductions. But when Rebecca dug deeper, she found that some of the W-2s were from companies that no longer existed. Shell corporations, maybe. Everything was smoke and mirrors. Every single document, every story, every piece of evidence of our life together was built on a foundation of lies. And then, 6 weeks after his arrest, I got a call from Daniel's attorney. He wanted to meet with me, said Daniel wanted to explain everything before the trial. I said no, then I said yes, then I changed my mind again. Emma begged me not to go. Mom, he'll just lie again. That's all he knows how to do. But I needed to hear it. I needed to look him in the eye and ask him the one question that haunted me every sleepless night. Was any of it real? I met with Daniel at the Federal Detention Center. Maximum security, orange jumpsuit, shackles on his wrists. He looked smaller somehow, like the removal of his fake identity had physically diminished him. When he saw me, he started crying immediately. "Sarah," he said. "God, Sarah, I'm sorry." I didn't cry. I'd cried myself dry over the past 6 weeks. I just looked at him and said, "Tell me the truth, all of it. You owe me that much." And he did. For 2 hours in that visitation room, Daniel Kovac told me his real story, and it was somehow worse than I'd imagined. "My name is Daniel Kovac," he began. "That part is true. I was born in Newark, New Jersey in 1969. My father was a cop.
My mother was a nurse, like you, actually. That's part of why I was drawn to you. I became a police officer at 23, followed in my father's footsteps. I was good at it, really good. So good that they recruited me for undercover work when I was 26. In 1996, I went undercover to infiltrate the Genovese crime family. Deep cover. I became someone else. I did things. He stopped, looked away. I did terrible things to maintain my cover, things I can never take back. I was undercover for 18 months. I was close to taking down a major operation, but someone inside the department leaked my real identity. My partner, my real partner, another undercover cop named Mike Riley, he was killed. They made it look like I did it, set me up perfectly. The department couldn't protect me. The mob wanted me dead. Internal Affairs wanted to prosecute me for Mike's murder, even though I didn't do it. So I ran. The witness protection story? Half true. I did agree to testify against the family in exchange for immunity and protection, but I knew the mob had infiltrated parts of the Marshal Service. I'd learned that during my undercover work, so I couldn't trust witness protection. 6 months into the program, I disappeared. I created David Morrison. I moved to Columbus because it was anonymous, Midwest, big enough to blend in, small enough to notice if someone was looking for me. I asked him the question I'd been holding. And then you met me? Was that part of the plan? Was I just convenient cover? He looked me in the eye. No, God no. Meeting you was the most random, unexpected thing. I went to that hospital fundraiser because I thought I should appear to have a normal life, do normal things. I didn't plan to ask anyone out. I was trying to keep my head down. But when I met you, Sarah, you looked at me like I was a person, not a cop, not a criminal, not an asset, just a person. And I fell in love with you. I know you don't believe me. I wouldn't believe me either, but it's true. The first year we dated, I told myself I'd tell you the truth, that I'd explain everything and give you the choice. But I was terrified you'd leave. And by the time we got married, I'd convinced myself that David Morrison was real, that Daniel Kovac was dead, that I could just be this person forever. I felt numb listening to him. You had 25 years to tell me, I said. Emma almost got into serious trouble with drugs when she was 15. You could have used your real experience as a cop to help her, but you stayed silent. You let our daughter suffer to protect your cover. He flinched like I'd hit him. I know. That's when I almost told you. But I convinced myself I could help her as David, and I did help her, didn't I? She got through it. My mother died, I continued. I was devastated. I told you I needed honesty, that I needed you to be real with me, and you said nothing. I'm sorry, he whispered. And the DNA test? Emma was so excited. You crushed her. Because you were afraid of being caught, not afraid for our safety, afraid for yourself. Yes, he admitted. You're right, I was selfish. I was a coward. I chose myself over all of you, over and over again. I leaned forward. So why confess now? After 25 years, why did you choose our anniversary party to destroy everything? He pulled an envelope from his pocket. The guard had allowed it as evidence. Inside was a photograph. It showed Daniel in what must have been his old life, younger, wearing a police uniform. Someone had drawn a red X over his face. On the back, written in block letters, October 14th, last chance. I received this a week before the party, he said. No postmark, hand-delivered to our house while we were out. I knew someone had found me. I had 3 choices: run again, get killed, or turn myself in on my own terms. I couldn't run. I couldn't leave you and the kids without an explanation this time, and I didn't want to die and have you find out about my past from police showing up to tell you my body had been found. So I chose option 3, control the narrative, confess before I was forced to. But you didn't confess to protect us, I said. You confessed to protect yourself, to look noble instead of trapped. He didn't deny it. The trial happened 2 months later. Federal charges: identity fraud, obstruction of justice, fleeing witness protection. The prosecution argued that Daniel had endangered my family by bringing his past into our lives. The defense argued he was a victim of a broken system, a cop who'd been failed by his department and forced to survive however he could. I was called to testify. They asked me if I'd known anything about my husband's real identity. I said no. They asked if he'd been a good husband. I said yes, and I hated myself for it. They asked if I felt victimized. I didn't know how to answer. Was I a victim? Or was I just stupid for not seeing what was right in front of me for 25 years? The jury deliberated for 3 days. They found him guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison.
But before sentencing, they announced one more thing. The charges related to his partner's murder had been dropped. New evidence, DNA from the crime scene, had finally exonerated him. The mob had killed Mike Riley, not Daniel. So he wasn't a murderer, just a liar who'd built an entire fake life and dragged me and our children into it. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt empty. 3 months after the sentencing, I was trying to build some kind of normal life. Emma had gone back to grad school. Jake had found a new job. I'd returned to work at the hospital, though people whispered when I walked by. I was home alone one Saturday afternoon, boxing up Daniel's things. Clothes I'd planned to donate, books, tools from his workshop, all the physical remnants of a ghost. I'd found a letter hidden in the basement, tucked behind a water heater where I'd never thought to look. It was dated 1 week before our anniversary party, addressed to me. I sat on the cold basement floor and read it. "Dear Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, I either told you the truth or I'm dead. I need you to know something. Everything I felt for you was real. Every moment, every kiss, every time I said I loved you. The life we built, Emma, Jake, every single day, that was the most honest thing I've ever done in my entire life. My name was a lie. My past was a lie. My legal existence was a lie. But my love for you was the only truth I had. You made me believe I could be David Morrison. You made me believe I could be good."
I'm confessing now, not because I'm brave. I'm confessing because they're coming for me, and I'd rather you hear the truth from me than find my body and learn about my past from strangers. I'm sorry I was too much of a coward to tell you sooner. I'm sorry I stole the choice from you. You deserved a real life with a real man. I only ever gave you a ghost. But please know, I became more real with you than I'd ever been before. David Morrison was the best version of me, and you created him. David, because that's who I really became. I cried reading that letter. After 3 months of being numb, I finally cried, because part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to believe that love could exist inside a lie. And then there was a knock on my door. I wiped my eyes, went upstairs, looked through the peephole. A woman stood on my porch, late 50s, well-dressed in a gray coat, holding a purse. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" She looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Pity? Concern? "You don't know me," she said. "My name is Patricia Russo, and I'm Daniel Kovac's first wife." The world tilted. "His what?" "Can I come in?" she asked. "What I have to tell you, you need to be sitting down." I let her in. What else was there to be shocked by at this point? We sat in my living room, the room where David and I had watched 1,000 movies, where we'd celebrated Christmases, where we'd been a family. And Patricia Russo told me a story that shattered what was left of my reality. "I married Daniel Kovac in 1994, she began. "I was 32, he was 25. He swept me off my feet.
He was charming, attentive, everything I'd ever wanted. We got married after 6 months of dating. He told me he was a financial consultant. He traveled for work. He was very private about his past, said his family was dead, that he didn't like to talk about it. I thought he was wounded. I thought I could heal him. 2 years into our marriage, I inherited money from my grandmother. A lot of money. $300,000.
My heart started pounding. Daniel convinced me to let him invest it, Patricia continued. He said he had connections, that he could double it. I trusted him. I loved him. And over the next 6 months, he slowly drained every penny. When I confronted him, he disappeared, just vanished one day while I was at work, took the money, took his clothes, left his wedding ring on the kitchen table. I never saw him again. I reported it to the police. They investigated. Turned out the social security number he'd given me was fake. Daniel Kovac, at least the Daniel Kovac I married, didn't legally exist. The police said he was likely a con artist who'd done this before. They never found him. That was in 1996, she said, 28 years ago. I never remarried, never trusted anyone again. I felt sick. Why are you here? I asked. Why now? Because I saw your husband's trial on the news, she said. I saw his face, and I recognized him immediately. Daniel Kovac, the man who destroyed my life. Except, according to the news, he was a police officer, a witness in protection, a victim of the mob. She laughed bitterly. And I thought, that's the most elaborate lie he's ever told. I stared at her. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't think Daniel was ever a cop, Patricia said. I think that story, the undercover operation, the mob hit, the witness protection, I think he made it all up. I think Daniel Kovac is a con artist, a professional liar, and both of us were his marks. No, I said. The FBI verified his story. They had records. He testified in court in 1998. Did they verify it? Or did they find records that he created? Sarah, this man is a master at building false identities. You found 6 passports in your basement. Who's to say his police credentials weren't just as fake? I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to defend Daniel, to prove her wrong. But I couldn't, because she was right. How much of his story had actually been verified? Patricia opened her purse and pulled out a folder. After I saw the news, I hired a private investigator, someone good, really good. I needed to know who I'd really been married to, and what we found, Sarah, you need to see this. She handed me the folder. Inside, documents, photographs, records going back decades. Daniel Kovac first appears in public records in 1993, she explained. Before that, nothing. No birth certificate on file in Newark, no school records, no childhood footprint at all. The Daniel Kovac identity was created in 1993, probably bought from someone who makes fake documents. The police officer story? My investigator contacted the Newark Police Department. They have no record of a Daniel Kovac ever being employed there. No academy graduation, no badge number, no personnel file. The witness protection records? My investigator found inconsistencies, missing paperwork, forged signatures from U.S. Marshals who don't exist or who were working in different districts at the time. I flipped through the documents, my hands shaking. This can't be right. The trial. They presented evidence. They presented documents that Daniel provided, documents he could have easily faked. Sarah, think about it. If he could create 6 different complete identities good enough to fool banks and the DMV for decades, why couldn't he create fake police credentials? But the mob, I said weakly, the hit he witnessed, the murder of his partner? Did anyone verify that independently, she asked, or did they just take his word for it?
I thought back to what the FBI had told me. The case file had inconsistencies, they'd said, details that didn't quite add up. They'd overlooked them because they wanted his testimony. Oh, God. There's more, Patricia said quietly. My investigator found 2 other women, one in Phoenix, one in Seattle, both married to men who matched Daniel's description in the late 90s and early 2000s, both abandoned after the men drained their bank accounts. Both men disappeared without a trace. She showed me photographs. Different names, Michael Chen, Robert Bradley, but the same face. Older in some, younger in others, but unmistakably him. How many women? I whispered. How many lives has he destroyed? We don't know, Patricia said. These are just the ones we found. There could be more. I felt like I was going to vomit. But he didn't take my money. We lived a normal life. He didn't drain my accounts.
No, Patricia agreed. With you, he did something different. He built something longer, more stable. Maybe he was getting older, tired of running. Maybe you were his retirement plan, a safe, normal cover that could last forever. Or maybe, she paused, maybe he really did love you, in whatever twisted way someone like him can love. The money in the filing cabinet, I said, realization dawning. $200,000. That's close to what he took from you. Patricia nodded. Plus whatever he took from the others. Plus those small cash deposits you probably didn't notice over the years. Sarah, I think Daniel has been running small cons on the side your entire marriage. Nothing big enough to draw attention, just enough to maintain his escape fund. I thought about David's work trips, 2 or 3 days at a time, always paid in cash, he'd said it, because it was contract work. Had he been working at all? Or had he been running cons in other cities? I called the FBI, I told Patricia. Right now, I need to tell them. I already did, she said, 2 weeks ago. They're reopening the investigation into Daniel's true identity. The trial verdict might be overturned, or he might face new charges. Good, I said, and I meant it. Patricia stood to leave. At the door, she turned back to me. Sarah, I'm sorry. I know this makes it worse, not better. Part of me thought maybe not telling you would be kinder. Let you believe the cop story, the witness protection story. At least that's tragic. This is just pathetic. No, I said. I needed to know. Thank you. After she left, I sat alone in my living room for hours. Just sat there as the sun went down, as the shadows grew long, as the temperature dropped. Everything Daniel had told me, in the visitation room, in his letter, in 25 years of marriage, all of it was lies. The undercover cop story was probably just another con. The witness protection narrative was cover for a lifetime of fraud. He wasn't a tragic hero forced into hiding. He was a professional con artist who'd chosen me as his longest, most elaborate mark. The question that haunted me most, had he ever loved me? Or was I just a particularly useful prop in his never-ending performance? I wanted to believe the letter. I wanted to believe that some part of David Morrison was real, that some part of what we built together mattered. But I couldn't, because even the confession, even the supposedly honest revelation at our anniversary party, was just another layer of lies. The victim story was easier to forgive than the truth. He was a predator who'd been running from consequences his entire adult life. 2 weeks later, the FBI came back to my house, Agent Chen and Agent Webb, same as before. Mrs. Morrison, Agent Chen said. They still called me that, even though the name was as fake as everything else. We've completed our re-investigation into Daniel Kovac's identity, and you need to know what we found. Daniel Kovac's witness protection file contains multiple forged documents. We've confirmed that several supposed U.S. Marshal signatures are fake. The Newark Police Department has no record of his employment.
The 1998 trial where he supposedly testified against the Genovese family, we pulled the transcripts. He did testify, but we now believe his testimony was fabricated. He may have had inside knowledge of the family's operations, but not because he was a cop, because he was working with them or had infiltrated them on his own, for reasons we don't understand. The murder of his alleged partner, Mike Riley. There was a Mike Riley who was killed in 1997 in New Jersey, but he wasn't Daniel's partner. He was an actual undercover officer. The DNA evidence that supposedly exonerated Daniel, it was already on file. Daniel just pointed us to it and claimed it proved his innocence. We fell for it. I felt dizzy. So who is he, really? Agent Webb shook his head. We don't know. His fingerprints don't match anyone in any database. His DNA shows ancestry from 3 different regions, but no matches to family trees. Even his approximate age is uncertain. He could be anywhere from 52 to 60. Daniel Kovac appears to be a complete fabrication built on top of other fabrications. Whoever your husband is, we may never know his real name or where he really came from. What happens now? I asked. We're filing additional federal charges for fraud, perjury, and obstruction of justice. His sentence will likely be extended significantly, and we're working with agencies in other states to investigate the cases Patricia Russo brought to our attention. He'll die in prison, Agent Chen said, even if we never figure out who he really is. I should have felt satisfaction, justice, something, but I just felt empty. It's been 4 months since the anniversary party that destroyed my life. 4 months since I learned that everything I thought was real was carefully constructed fiction. Daniel, or whoever he is, remains in federal custody. His lawyer tried to argue that he's a victim of circumstance, but the evidence against him keeps growing. They've now connected him to 5 different women across 3 decades. 5 marriages, all under different names, hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen. With me, he played a longer game. He built a life, raised children, created the illusion of normalcy. Maybe I was different. Maybe I was the retirement plan. Or maybe, and this is what keeps me up at night, maybe he did love me in some broken, twisted way. Because here's the thing. David Morrison, the man I married, was kind. He was patient. He was a good father. Emma and Jake are struggling with this more than anything. How do you reconcile the dad who taught you to ride a bike, who helped with homework, who showed up to every soccer game, with the monster he apparently was? Our therapist says that's the nature of profound deception. The mask becomes so convincing that even the person wearing it starts to believe it. Maybe David Morrison was who he wished he could be. Maybe for 25 years, he actually became that person. But it doesn't change the fact that it was all built on lies. I filed for an annulment. It was granted immediately. Hard to stay married to someone when the marriage was never legal in the first place. I'm reverting to my maiden name, Sarah Chen, reclaiming the identity I had before David Morrison entered my life. Emma and Jake are in intensive therapy. Emma changed her last name too. She doesn't want any connection to Morrison or Kovac or whatever his name is. Jake is still processing. He keeps saying, "But Dad was Dad. He was good to us. Doesn't that count for something?" And I don't know how to answer that. The house is on the market. I can't live here anymore. Every room holds memories that I can't trust. Did we really laugh together on this couch, or was he performing? Did he really cry when his father, his fake dead father, supposedly died, or was that just another manipulation? I've started dating again, tentatively, and it's terrifying, because how do you trust anyone after this? How do you believe someone when they tell you about their past, their family, their life? My first date after everything, the man told me about his childhood, and I found myself thinking, is any of this real? Are you real? I actually Googled him afterward, verified his college degree, his employment history, his social media, going back years, and I felt disgusted with myself for doing it, but also relieved when it all checked out. This is what he did to me. He made me suspicious of everyone. He took my ability to trust and shattered it into a million pieces. I've had people ask me, how did you not know? How did you live with someone for 25 years and not see the signs? And I tell them, because I loved him. Because love is trust. Because when you share a life with someone, you're not constantly interrogating their every word and action. You assume the person next to you is who they say they are. He weaponized the best parts of me, my compassion, my loyalty, my ability to believe in people, and used them against me for a quarter of a century. But here's what I'm learning in therapy, what I'm slowly starting to believe. I'm not stupid for being deceived. He was a professional. This is what he does. I wasn't his victim because I was naive. I was his victim because I was human. The FBI told me there's a possibility they'll never discover his true identity. He might take that secret to his grave. And in a way, that's the most disturbing part. I shared a life with a ghost. I had children with a man who doesn't exist.
Emma asked me last week, Mom, was any of it real? Any moment, any feeling? And I told her what I'm choosing to believe. Yes, the life we built was real. The love you and Jake received from your father, whoever he was, that was real. The memories we have, they're ours. We own them, not him. Because if I don't believe that, if I let him poison every single memory of 25 years, then he wins, and I refuse to give him that. So I'll leave you with the questions that haunt me, the questions I think about every day. Was there ever a real person underneath all those lies? Or was he just masks on top of masks, on top of masks, all the way down to nothing? Can love exist inside a lie? Can you really love someone while deceiving them about your entire existence? And here's the biggest question. If you were in my position, if you discovered tomorrow that your partner of 25 years was someone completely different, could you forgive them? Would you want to? I need to know what you think. I need to know I'm not alone in this confusion. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think any part of our marriage was real? Do you think he loved me? Or was I just the longest con? And tell me, how do you trust again after something like this? How do you open your heart to another person when the last person you trusted destroyed you so completely? I'm reading every single comment because, honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how to feel about all of this, and maybe your perspective will help. If this story affected you the way it affected me when I lived it, I have another one you need to hear. It's about a woman who reported her husband missing, and then police found him living 3 blocks away with an entirely new family. Neither woman knew the other existed. Click the video on your screen right now, because the truth is, these stories are more common than any of us want to believe. And if you want to hear more true stories about deception, betrayal, and survival, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. Here's what I've learned. The person you think you know best might be the person you don't know at all. Trust carefully, love deeply, but always, always keep your eyes open. My name is Sarah Chen, and this was my story. The question is, how many other people are living the same lie right now and don't even know it?